Hi, everyone, and welcome. We're going to start in a minute or two, so please get comfortable. Make sure you've got a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, get a cup of something stronger, and do say hello to us in the comments. Where are you joining us from today? I am joined today by Andy Seth. Andy's on the line. Andy, hello.
What's up?
What are you drinking during this?
I'm drinking a little sparkling water.
A little sparkling water, of course. Is it flavored, that one, or is it? What's going on?
Man. Yeah, blueberry pomegranate. I feel just a little effervescent for this webinar. So,
effervescent, yeah, right, yeah, that's great, and that's
a double entendre, buddy.
And Andy, really important question. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
What did I have for breakfast?
Yeah.
Celebrated life, dude. Today was a big milestone, actually. Personal milestone. 2 months ago, I weighed 200 pounds, and today I'm 183. So I've just been on a tear, man. Look at these. What you talking about? That's webinar ready.
Wow. Well, there you have it.
But no, that's a big milestone for me. So I've been on the eggs grind for a hot minute now. That's the breakfast. That's a big milestone. Feeling good.
Congratulations. That's huge.
Thanks, huge. Dude.
All right. We're going to get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this Vervoe webinar. I'm Dom Hennequin. I'm Vervoe's Content Marketing Manager. And today we're talking about how skills-based hiring can be used for all roles, from apprentices to COOs. Joining me today is entrepreneur Andy Seth. Andy is the founder of Flow and a new apprenticeship training business called Apprentix. He's also a Vervoe customer and has used our skills assessment platform to help him hire across his multiple businesses over many years. He's also the author of a book, Bling, a story about ditching the struggle and living in flow. And we're very happy to have him here today. Andy, thanks for joining us.
It is my pleasure. It's good to have
you. All right. Here. Yeah, good to have you. First things first, look, I want to know a bit about you and your story. And look, before we get into everything, if you've got any questions for Andy and you're watching from home, please leave them in the comments and we will try to get to them before the end of the session. Andy, look, tell us a bit about who you are and, what shaped you, what drives you, and sort of give us the quick tour of you that's kind of landed you here in this industry today.
You got it, man. You got it. So if you are listening to this live or you're listening to this on replay, this is the moment where you just shut all those tabs down and you're like engrossed, because I'm going to make you a promise. The promise is I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, but it's going to connect some really fundamental dots when it comes to hiring skills-based, using skills-based hiring. I'm going to connect some dots here for you, but I promise you, I will tell you a good story at a minimum. So this is that moment. So the start of this is I'm going to walk you back into a little bit of the background that I have, and then the businesses I've created. And then we'll obviously get into some of the skills-based hiring and the tool and how we use this to hire, because it's not just a tool. It's also about how you implement it. So from my background perspective, I grew up in LA. I'm a son of 2 immigrants from India. We grew up in a motel from the age of 0 to 14. We didn't own it. I'd like to pretend like we did, but we did not. We just lived in it. And so I grew up there and learned that education was going to be one path for me to kind of make it out, but so was entrepreneurship. I started my first business when I was 13. It was a DJ business. I DJ'd from the age of 13 to 22. So I learned.
Where were you DJing at 13, if I may ask?
Raves. So this was, I started spinning in 1993. And so I was spinning at raves, and my mom would take me.
Wow, cool.
So
thanks, Mom.
Yeah, so I started spinning then, and over the years during the .com boom, I started a web design company, sold that. Then I started golfstore.com, sold that, and then I've had a number of different businesses, from procurement outsourcing to wealth management, which I built up to 100 million in assets, to now these businesses that are kind of a portfolio of companies for me that I don't look at selling necessarily, but rather to continue to build. And so from my own background perspective, I've never really subscribed to this like traditional path that I'm going to go, to school. I did go to a great high school. I got a full ride to a military academy in Indiana called Culver Military. I got a full ride to Boston College. So I did look like on paper, like I had this traditional path, but the reality is all the while I'm DJing, I'm building this company. And those are the things that actually ended up materializing into anything. It wasn't my degrees per se. And so I've not really ever had this traditional path. As a result of that, when it came time for me to kind of build my next business, I thought about what is it that I want to work on? What's the problem I want to solve? I had just sold my wealth management business in the end of 2015, grown that to 100 million in assets, sold that. And I frankly had more time and money than I had ever had, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do that would feel fulfilling. That was that moment. Like, okay, you can choose now kind of anything. What is it you want to work on? And I had been helping a lot of low-income youth go to college, kids like myself, helping them go to college on scholarships. I have a nonprofit work. I have a schools. Like I've helped in the thousands do that, but I wasn't doing anything for low-income youth not going to college. Now that's to say there's skills that they have. I just didn't know how to help them develop those skills. And so I came across this concept of apprenticeships. In the wealth management world, I had seen the Swiss banking model. Swiss banking is pretty notorious for their ability to create apprenticeships. And I saw that and I created an apprenticeship in my wealth management business. It worked out pretty well, but it wasn't for low income youth. It was just an apprenticeship. And so when I started the next thing, I said, I want to create apprenticeships. An apprenticeship is basically a formalized training structure for job training. So I want to hire people that have some fundamental skills, and these youth didn't have education or a lot of experience. So I needed to find a way to hire people with certain skills, specifically writing. They needed to be great writers, but they were probably going to be great academic writers. But the business I started was a customer service business in the US. And so they could type, they could do live chat, they could do email, but I never put them on the phones. So it was like a digital only customer service company. And so I said, okay, I've got to be able to hire people based on skills, not on education experience, because these people, they don't have the education experience yet. Shoot, how do I do that? Then I need to train them up and build their skills so that their skills meet the future needs of my business. And so this was really where the apprenticeships come in. Apprenticeships are very different than internships. Internships are typically very short term, maybe 1 to 3 months, surface level in terms of the knowledge that the individual is gaining. It's not really a talent pipeline for the company, whereas an apprenticeship is quite the contrary. It could be also short term. It could be a couple months to a couple years, but there's formalized courses, there's on the job training, and the whole intent is that you're skilling someone up to meet the demands of your business. That's the whole purpose. It's job training, but wrapped up with some really nice touches. And so that's really, like, from my own background, why I got into this area of wanting to help specifically low-income youth with apprenticeships. And that's what I've done. And so I had to figure some things out, which we'll talk about here. But I'm proud to say that now my company, Flow, which is I have a marketing business as well, where the customer service agents learn how to do marketing through their apprenticeship, and then they go into that company. Flow has been recognized for 4 years running as the top 10% of all B Corps worldwide for our social impact. So we're doing something that's working, and that's why I like to talk about how we hire and train specifically, because my competitive advantage, obviously I have a good process, I've got a good product, but I've got great people. My competitive advantage is really the people. And if you say that, then I would say, well, then how could you have great people if you're not recruiting great people using skills-based recruiting? And how would you have great people if you're not training them using skills? And so, there's two platforms that do this work. Vervoe is the one on the skills-based hiring. Apprentix, the one I've built, is the one on the skills-based training.
We've got a lot to unpack there. You give a bit of everything, including the Vervoe plug. So I can let myself out now, and we can just you can just take it from here, Andy. No, but that's such a interesting kind of compelling story, right from the beginning, living in a motel, all the way to where you are today with multiple businesses under your belt. I guess the first question I have is really, you sound like someone who, you said you do kind of have that, traditional educational background on paper in some ways, but it sounds like you are, incredibly skilled in many different, areas or sectors or things, and you've built businesses around many of those things. Tell me a little bit about, all the way from the .coms to where you are today, where you've kind of found your mission. Where did those skills come from? Where did you develop the different skills for the various kind of everything from wealth management to being a DJ? How did you develop the skills to build businesses around those things successfully?
Yeah, I think that's something that I partially have a gift for, which is acquiring the ability to learn quickly and being able to deploy those learnings into something. So the implementation aspect. But I also learned something really important. When I went to this military school, it was a really prestigious military academy. If we were to look it up, there's some very famous people that come out of it and whatnot. I went there and I felt really out of place. I was from the inner city, like a motel in LA, to a military academy in Indiana. That's about as different culturally as you can get. And there was a day where I just really, I had been feeling like I didn't belong there. I think a feeling that a lot of people get, especially when you're young and you haven't really found your thing, or if you move to a different place. And I went to my commandant of cadets. He is the head military guy, if you will. And I said to Colonel Shine that I wanted to meet with him. And I told him, like, I don't feel like I fit in here. This is hard. Like everybody's really rich. Like, I just don't feel like this is for me. I'm thinking about leaving. And he said to me, Seth, because he calls me everyone by their last name in the military, right? He says, Seth, let me tell you something. You don't walk in here with people knowing your last name. So you've got to earn their respect. And the way you earn their respect is you beat them. You beat them academically, athletically, and militarily. And when you beat them, you will get their respect. And that kind of unlocked a little bit of something in me. This permission and allowance to be competitive in a way that was productive. It wasn't aggression that was fighting, something that I was more used to from where I came from. It was aggression with fighting with your brain. And what I started to see was if I learned something that somebody else didn't learn, I'd beat them. That's where it comes from, was I felt like I needed to prove myself. Now, I think I've healed from that. I think that served me maybe well as a kid, but that can cause trauma as an adult, that you always have a chip on your shoulder and you need to prove yourself. That's not how I am at all. And I've hopefully done a lot of healing from that. But I will say that's where it came from, was this need to feel like I knew I wouldn't fit in. So therefore I had to create a world that fit to me. In order to create the world that fit to me, I needed to have skills that were better than others. And what happened was I started to get good at building skills. So if I'm DJing, I'm able to teach myself how to DJ, but I'm also able to find people who are willing to teach me certain things. Part of an apprenticeship, for example, is having a mentor, but it's a formalized mentor. There's a specific thing that they do. And our platform, Apprentix, helps people define what that specific thing is that they need to do. It's not just like, here's this assigned person. When I wanted to build Apprentix, for example, the pandemic had happened. I wanted a project. My companies, fortunately, run on their own. They actually run off of people who have graduated from being apprentices, and now they run those companies. I wanted to teach myself to program. I'm Indian. I figured it's got to be in my blood. And I thought maybe I'll be good at it. And so, but I wanted to learn how. And so that's what I taught myself. But I hired somebody to coach me. I hired a programming coach, not a developer firm to build it, a coach to help get me unstuck and to move me along. Effectively, I apprenticed myself to teach myself the skills. Over the course of a year, I taught myself how to program, and the project I worked on, at a minimum, would just be something that I learned some skills, or what's happened is it's actually a useful platform. So that's the end result of that. But now I've just become so accustomed to being able to dream something up and saying, I bet you there's a way I could do that. When I made my album, for example, that album has now been streamed in 39 countries. Like, I got Shazammed in Belgium the other day. Like, who in Belgium is Shazamming my song? But that's dope. Like, that's just like a cool thing. When my book went bestseller, #1 on Amazon in our categories, like 3 categories all within the first day, like things like that, they're totally doable. You just need the skills. And I translate that into my businesses because a lot of people don't have traditional paths, but they have the skills you need. And I don't have a traditional path, though I could have a traditional path from an education standpoint. But if you looked at me and you said, well, you don't know anything about programming, how would you do that? I'd say, I don't. But like, here's all the things that I have behind me, right? When I did web design, that's UI, UX. When I was doing procurement outsourcing, I was heavy in analytics. That's database architecture. And then when I was building out outsourcing centers, that's process mapping. That's called workflow. And when you map UI, UX to database through workflow, that's software. So like, that's how you stack skills. But being able to hire people like that is a gift if you can see that potential in them. But it can't be something that you magically do. You have to be able to systematically do. And that's what I've figured out Vervoe actually helps me with, is systematically find what those skills are that people have and identify, is that skill stack the one that I need now? And can I stack up their skills beyond this to continue to grow them so that they're evolving with the company and pushing the company forward, as opposed to kind of aging out of it, if you will, not from an age perspective, but just because they haven't got the skills anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So interesting. It kind of sounds like, I mean, to, not have done, programming much and then being able to build a platform. I mean, did you develop skills when you were motivated to get to a particular outcome? Like you wanted to, whether it's like write a book or, create a platform or just create a business in this sector.
Yeah.
The kind of person that was like, well, this is the goal and all I need to do is drive through, figure that outcome out. And then the skills, you're not even fully aware that you're developing, of what skills you need to develop as you're going.
Yeah, it's a cool way to ask this question, because the question often comes up, like when you sell a business, one of the things you have to ask yourself is, what do you want to do next? And what you start to do is take an inventory of all the skills, network, interests, passions that you have. And all of a sudden you end up in the situation where like, I literally don't know what to do. I have paradox of choice. If you look to ask a different question, a better question, you might find your way. For me, the question that was better was, what problem do you want to solve? And when I asked myself, what problem do I want to solve? I said, well, the problem I want to work on, I don't know if I'll solve it alone, but the problem I want to work on is providing career pathways for youth that are not going to college. That's the problem I want to work on. Because that became like the North Star, all of a sudden, all these skills and contacts and networks and passions and interests all just laser beam towards it. So when it came time for me to teach myself to program, I had in my head that there should be a software platform that allows people to create apprenticeships from scratch, because there isn't one. There's literally not one out there. It should allow them to register their apprenticeships with the government, sort of like in the US TurboTax. You can fill out basic interview questions and it will fill all the complicated government forms out for you. Registered apprenticeships are a complicated government process. There should be a way to automate that. And then once you have an apprenticeship and it's registered, you don't have to register it, by the way. But if you have an apprenticeship, then how do you manage that? So you've got to be able to do time logging, to evaluations, to providing evidence, to wage progressions, all these components to it, mentoring. And so I knew that this needed to exist, and that if it did, it would expand the apprenticeships that were created because it was easier. Right now, it's just, if you don't use this system, it's a massive burden. Ask anybody. It took me almost 2 years to get my first apprenticeship, to try to register the thing. I had it lifted, but to register it took almost 2 years. You can literally do it automated within minutes now inside of Apprentix. So something like that, which hasn't been done before, will get more people to do it. I knew that if I could build this thing in my head, that it would solve a number of problems, and that it would expand this thing that I believe in so much, which is to create career pathways for people. And it doesn't have to be whether they're in college or not. That was just my personal business mantra. But the platform helps anybody, helps new hires to upskilling. We've literally upskilled to people who run my companies. There are COOs who have been apprentices. I have contractors who are doing apprenticeships in business development. I have customer service agents who are doing apprenticeships in marketing ops or content marketing. I mean, it's really your imagination and the need of the business are what dictate what you would create an apprenticeship in. So yeah, I was very focused on this platform has to exist. I know it's a need. I've had the need myself, and friends who are entrepreneurs had the need. I knew if I created that thing that it would work. And I mean, fortunately it has.
You achieved so much before this current sort of North Star that you're following now. What, I guess, like, you know, I've read a bit about, you talk about spirituality. I've read a bit about, you know, you talk about selling some of your businesses and then kind of hitting rock bottom, I don't know, in your mission or in your spirituality at some point, and looking for more purpose in what you were able to do. But yet you got so far before that. Was the motivating factor before this current mission to help, you know, lower income or, you know, people, younger people that need that kind of opportunity? Was the mission up to that point just to succeed on either a business level or a, you know, developing skills level or a, you know, financial level? Like, how did you get that far to get to, I don't know, the privileged position to be able to go, I now know what I have and I'm going to dedicate it to something big?
I think there's a question that's plagued me a long time, which is, how do you do well while doing good? That two-trick pony is a difficult one to ride, because you've got to be able to turn a profit and make some sort of an impact or have some sort of a mission. When I was building the wealth management company, I tried to turn that business into something it's not. What I tried to do with it was use it for kind of a force for good in the community. We had paid time for employees to be able to volunteer. We sponsored events. I was the board chair of numerous organizations, you know, just try to get us all involved. When I sold it, the majority interest, all of that got stripped away overnight. And I realized, oh, that's not a business model. That's me. The business model doesn't have doing good baked into it. You could literally run a wealth management company and not do any good. Like, you make up people money. That's the point of the business, but you didn't have to do anything else. And so I realized there that though I was trying to shove this social good into a business, it wasn't really the point of the business. The mission of the business wasn't anything else other than to make people money. That is the point of the business. Call it what you want. So when it came time to building the next business, I did have to take some time. So I sold at the end of 2015. My transition period lasted for 1 quarter into 2016. And then I took off. I spent time traveling with my family, and then I kind of did my little spiritual mission back to India, where my family's from. Spent a lot of time with my uncle, who is a very successful businessman, but he has this kind of joy that if he lost it all, you somehow know he'd just be as fine. Like, there's something about his vibration where you're like, how do you do that? And I wanted to learn from him. So I sat with him in his shop. And he's by American standards, he's very successful. By Indian standards, mind-blowingly successful. And just has this joy. And so I sat and learned. And I took those lessons, obviously implemented them. This is the thing that I mentioned I'm pretty good at, is I learned something and I can quickly implement. And I also felt like this was a really powerful message. And one time in a meditation, it kind of came to me that there's this story that could be told. And that story turned into Bling. I wrote Bling in 5 days. It was just flow state. It just was coming through constantly. And then I produced an album that's a soundtrack to that book, because I believe if you're trying to spread a message, music spreads really well. 39 countries in Shazam and Belgium, well, right? So
it's the Shazam in Belgium. It's the Shazam in, that's all you need. You need a plug.
Yeah.
Shazam plug.
Right. So every chapter in the book has a track of the same name on the album. 7 chapters, 7 tracks. Each track is influenced by the chapter. And it's all clean. So like, my kids know it. They know the lyrics, they know the message. And, you know, that was really what I wanted to do, was be able to share what I learned, because I know other people go through this kind of thing. It wasn't just because I sold a business and I felt like, wow, I should be more excited about my life. I mean, I was good with my life, but I also knew, like, wow, this isn't actually all that it's cracked up to be. But people can feel that at any phase in life. And so I just felt like this was a really important message. There's not even a business model attached to this. Obviously the book costs money because it costs to print. It's on Amazon and blah, 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 and all that stuff. You can go to my personal website and get a free album. You can listen to the album for free. It's on Spotify as well. There's not a business attached. I don't sell meditation. I don't sell yoga. I don't sell guru. I don't sell any of that stuff. I just believe it works. And if anything, I teach my own employees about how to get into flow state. You know, part of doing inner work and spirituality teaches you concentration. It teaches you meditation, but also teaches you how to get into flow. And when you get into flow, you're really productive. You know, one day, 4 or 5 hours worth of flow can equal a week of your work. So imagine if you could do 2 days, 3 days worth of flow state work. It's a pretty productive month worth of work in a week.
Flow state means what? Just being
flow state is when you are able to work on something that's slightly challenging, not so challenging that you struggle, but not so easy that you get bored. So it's got to be slightly challenging on something that you care deeply about. And when you put those two things together, then you have two conditions, and you need to create some other conditions around it. You need to be able to have recovery time. So you have to sleep correctly. You have to be able to go through struggle before you get into flow. So if you study flow states, if you don't struggle at first, that means it's too easy, whatever you're working on. So there's going to be a little struggle. So when I'm programming, I wouldn't bite off something that was crazy hard that I didn't know how to do. I'd bite off a small piece, but it would be struggle. You have to get into struggle and then release the struggle. You don't release it through exercise. You release it through something mildly physical, like going on a walk. You might do a 15-minute walk or a 5-minute walk, and then come back down and sit down again. And that's when you get into flow. And once you get into flow, it'll feel like time is irrelevant. You don't really know. And people get into flow through sports, music, dancing. They get into flow in all kinds of ways. But to get it at work, this is kind of the formula. And that's what I teach, that formula. Like I said, it's not a business that I sell this program or something. It's just what I teach because I know it'll yield productivity. It's just a smart business move. And the people that we work with, I think they're really interested in being able to tap into that in themselves. You get into flow state, once you're in, your fingers or whatever you're working on are moving. They're moving quick because you're not having to consciously think of everything. And there's like a message is running through you, and you got to trust that what's coming out should be pretty good. And generally speaking, the output's pretty tremendous.
Awesome. Let's talk a bit about skills-based hiring, and we'll talk about apprenticeships just in a sec. But I guess, what was the first time that you remember using skills-based hiring to hire someone for your business?
Oh, I know. We had just started the customer service business, customer service outsourcing business. That one's called Radiance. Mm-hmm. I just started it, and I was told by folks kind of in this world of what's called workforce development. I didn't know there was a term, but this world of workforce development. Somebody had said hey, you can't just ask them for a resume. And in wealth management, that's all we did. We just asked people for a resume and then made massive amounts of judgments. They're like, they don't have resumes. These people that you're trying to hire don't have resumes. And I was like, oh, I didn't think of that. So what are they going to upload? They're like, they literally are not going to upload. You should create a Google form and ask them questions and then assess the answers to the questions. And I was like, oh my God, a Google form to hire people? That sounds like a terrible idea. But I understood what they were trying to tell me. Then another organization told me about this thing called skills-based job descriptions, an organization called Markle Foundation. Markle was pushing this concept through a division of theirs called Skillful. And they were basically pushing this idea that you should create skills-based job descriptions. And I sat down to write one, and it was a blank piece of paper. And I was like, I literally don't know how to write a skills-based job description, which is why inside of Apprentix, there are 54,000 jobs that I have in that where you type the job title in and will automatically build you an entire skills-based job description. I mean, it's what I needed. It's unbelievable. It could be its own product. It's that good. But 54,000 different job titles are in there. So you name it, and it's basically going to spit out a skills-based job description because it's so hard. How do you translate the things that you need into what skills are, what are they even called? You know, and what's the full list? You need a list that's mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive, what's called MECE. You need a list of that. You don't just need like a couple tidbits. You need it to really tell them what you need to have skills on. So I struggled at first because I didn't have my own tool, but I did get these folks to help me write a skills-based job description that literally I think took me 2 to 3 weeks. And then once I got the skills, I said, okay, the obvious is if these are the skills this job needs, I need to test or assess whether they have those skills. How do I do that? So I went Googling, and at the time, Vervoe had just launched. I think it was on one of those websites, you know, where it launches when Product Hunt or AppSumo or something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When you launch a software product, you kind of, and I came across that and I said, oh, this could be what I'm thinking of. And it turns out it was. When I built the skills assessments for my first hire, the first hire, I had almost no applicants. And I had almost no applicants because what I learned later was it sounded too good to be true. At the time, apprenticeships were just not a term that people associated with white collar jobs. They associated apprenticeships with blue collar jobs. And people still probably do. But it sounded like, wait a minute, I'm going to get paid full time. Plus you're going to pay for my courses. Plus you're going to teach me all this stuff. And like, I'll get a raise if I get this next promotion. Like, it sounded too good to be true. And so I didn't get applicants, and we're a new company. So I worked my network, got a few. What happened then after the first one was hired and we got success, when I hired the second one was the one where Vervoe shined. And the reason was I now had not just a few applicants. I had a testimonial from somebody who could say this apprenticeship has changed my life. And what happened was YouTube influencers picked up on this. It was a work from home job. It paid well. It taught you, it gave you courses at no cost to the person. It gave on the job learning or on the job training. And it just was an unheard of type of a job, right? Work remotely. And so these YouTube influencers who have millions of subscribers of people who follow them for great jobs, especially at the time, work from home. This is 2016, 2017, pre-pandemic. And they picked up on it and they distributed our jobs to their lists through their YouTube channels. And they would walk people through the application and whatnot. I got 3,000 applicants on my first customer service agent job after the first apprentice. Now, when you get 3,000 applicants, you're flooded. There's just no way. And at the time, I didn't expect that. I thought maybe 100, 150 would be cool. But I had built it in a way that regardless if it was 150 or 3,000, Vervoe handled all of it because it had so many automations. So I didn't intentionally do it for that many people. But once you've built automations, it works regardless, right? It's called scale. So I had this dumb luck of building something in a tool that could scale. It wasn't that I intended to go get that many applicants. It's now the process we have. We'd still get that many kinds of applicants, usually maybe 1,000 to 3,000. But we get a lot of applicants and we have to be able to go through those. And Vervoe is kind of amazing at the whole automation of so many components, the assessments, the auto scoring, the predictive scoring that's in there, the moving from stage to stage and triggering out the emails. One of the things that I do that people love, I mean, I get comments on this all the time. I made a video and uploaded it into Vervoe. If you haven't seen this yet, by the way, I definitely recommend you do this. Vervoe has this option where when somebody clicks to, log in and take their first assessment, they can see a video of you if you upload this video. I encourage you, I would almost say you have to do this. You have to put a video and just make this one statement. The video should say, thank you for taking the time to apply here. We know we're asking a lot of your time. And in return, we can't promise you that you'll make it to being the person that we hire. But what I will promise you is that you will hear from us. You will definitely hear from us if you're progressing to the next stage, but you'll also hear from us if you're not. And I promise you that, because there's nothing worse than putting all this time into a job and never hearing from them. And the reason I can make that promise is because Vervoe automates it. That's why I can make the promise. So what that does is it gets so many more people to apply because they don't feel like it's in vain. And especially when you're talking about people who can often self-select out. You know, a lot of people want to hire folks of diverse backgrounds, and diverse backgrounds could mean non-traditional schooling to non-traditional vocations, what have you. People will self-select so quickly, and the mentality used to be, well, if they don't feel like they can do it, they definitely can't. You're wrong. That's not actually true. They don't have the exact thing that you said, meaning 3 years in this type of this job, but they might have the exact skills because they had a different job, right? So that's what happens is they self-select because they don't make the translation. But if you make the translation to, here's the skills we need. Do you have these skills? Let's assess them. Vervoe will help you kind of spit that through then. And at the end of it, you end up with, here's the 3-5 candidates that we're going to actually talk to and interview. But you wouldn't want to do that on hundreds of people. You wouldn't do that. So anyways, I think that's a little bit of the first time we found, here's the value. It kind of was dumb luck that it happened, that we needed it.
Yeah, that's really good advice there about the video. And so interesting to hear from where it started to pretty much where things kind of are today. We're going to wrap up in a sec. If you do have any questions for Andy, leave them in the comments and we'll try and get to them. If you can quickly talk about, so you use Vervoe with Apprentix now as part of it. And I'm also interested to know how you got from, you know, using Vervoe and using skills-based hiring to help hire apprentices all the way to hiring a COO recently.
Yeah. That's such a cool story. I'll give it to you. So we have a client who is a customer of 2 of my companies. They're a customer of my marketing agency, and they're a customer of my customer service outsourcing agency. So we run all of this, it's a software company. We run all of their marketing, and we also handle all of their customer service. The CEO came to me and said, hey, look, you know, I'm trying to step myself out of this business operationally a little bit more. I need to hire an integrator / COO. He tried before, hired a recruiting firm, and they kind of pushed someone on him. And he was like, he didn't hire him. And he said, do you think you could help me? Because I've watched your recruiting process for the marketers and for the customer service agents, and like, you kill it every time. Could you help me hire a COO? And I was like, look, man, we're not a recruiting firm. He's like, you are though. Like, you are. You just recruit for the services you're delivering, but you are now you do recruit all the time. So like, could you design something for the COO? And I just took it as a challenge. I mean, obviously I charged, but like, I took it as a challenge. Like, could I do that? Could my team actually pull this off? And so within 2 minutes, we had an automated skills-based job description for a COO. That was easy. We refined it with the client. They came back and said, okay, we need skills assessments for every one of these categories of skills on this job description. We went right into Vervoe. Some of them we already had assessments for, things like communication or their customer service, you know, because we already were hiring for these things. But there were lots of things that we didn't have assessments for that this person needed to have. Vervoe has this thing called an assessment library. Like, you literally go into the templates and you search for it. And there's some that are kind of whack, and there's some that are just like, whoa, I would have never thought of it that way. And so you can pull exactly what's in the templates, or you can modify it for yourself. I think we did a combination of those. But what we found was we did 3 skills assessments. One was the minimum requirements. So just the basic stuff. Like, if they can't even meet these, they're gone. There was a technical requirement for the COO. And these were all kinds of hard skills, if you will. Multiple choice, automated scoring. Let's put it like that. So round 1, stage 1, automated scoring. Stage 2, automated scoring. Stage 3, we actually didn't use any multiple choices. We used all video and audio. So Vervoe allows candidates to respond via video and audio. What we found is when you watch someone respond, you're actually getting that live type of an interaction where you can pick up on their presentation skills, their ability to communicate off the cuff. You can even see their eyes moving if they've pre-written their response and they're reading it off of the screen. So you pick up on a lot of things just by watching their video response, to the point where you almost wonder, like, do I need an actual video? Like, do I need to actually interview them like off of Vervoe? It's a question we asked. That one, if you type in the type of response that is a good response, Vervoe's AI will predict how that person responded versus what you typed in is a great response, and it will score it. The nice thing about that is it starts to float people up. You still got to go in and evaluate those people and score them, but it starts to give you a prioritization, if you will. So you go through, score those people. One of the things I loved was you've got these shareable cards that we could send to the client. And so we could say, hey, here's where they scored in these 3 assessments, 90% or above, 90% or above, 90% or above. You can dive in as much as you want. Do you now want to interview them? Because they fully have the skills to do this job. Now it's a matter of, do they fit with you, CEO? Because this is your right-hand person. So do they fit with you? Sure enough, we ended up with 6 candidates that were all skilled, qualified through 3 rounds. Out of the 6, 4 passed the reference check, because we do a reference check. 4 passed the reference checks, and then those 4 met with the CEO, and he selected one, and that person got hired. It's kind of wild to think that we could use a similar system for customer service agents who are entry level, to apprentices, to a COO, but it just goes to show it's a process, and the product just enables the process. And once you look at it like that, it's actually really smooth sailing.
It's an incredible story. It goes to show the versatility of this method of hiring. Look, I got 3 final silly questions for you, and then we do have to wrap up. Have you been back to the motel that you sort of started?
Yeah, that's a funny question. When I was 16 years old, the person who owned it was condemned as a slumlord for, I think, like the 3rd time, and the city did a number of things. They put a lien against it. He then lost it, and they demolished it. To this day, now there's not a lot of properties in LA that are undeveloped. This one is still undeveloped. I wasn't 16. I was 14. I'm 44, and so this is exactly 30 years that property is still undeveloped. I've gone by. Not a lot's changed.
Interesting. Well, what was the song that was Shazammed in Belgium?
Which song was it? It was "Change for You." It's my love ballad, but it's got like a West Indian Caribbean vibe to it. I've got a great couple artists that I brought in with me on that track, but it's called "Change for You."
Great, Change for You. Hit it up on Spotify. And do you still DJ?
Yeah, I dabble. I like to play around with music a lot. I still write quite a bit. I wrote all the lyrics on the songs, so I write quite a bit. And music's always going to be a big part of my life. So yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the time that we have today. Andy, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
You can find out more about Apprentix and a lot of Andy's other businesses, but Apprentix, you can go to apprentix.io. You can also find Andy's book, Bling, on Amazon and on Andy's website as well, andyseth.com. Be sure to join us for our next webinar, which will be on April 4 at 8 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, April 3 if you're in the US. This will be about how to get the most out of skills assessments in your hiring. So this is a real kind of insidery. If you use Vervoe or you want to know the sort of secrets of how to get the most out of Vervoe, our 2 Vervoe experts, Jen Shellef and Stacey Garland, will be walking through with tips and tricks of how to get the most out of the platform and get the best results for what you're using it for. That's going to be August 4 at 8 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, August 3, 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and August 3, 3 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. We'll send invites for that out really, really soon. And also don't forget that today's webinar will be available as a replay later today. We'll send emails to everyone who clicked attending, and it's also available to watch at any time. So if anyone else will be interested in Andy's story, you can send it on to them and they can watch it in their own time. Thanks again for joining us. Thanks again, Andy, and we'll see you all very, very soon. Bye-bye.
Take care, y'all. Appreciate you hanging in.